Namaskar. My name is Didi Ananda Devapriya. I'm usually based in Romania, but today I happen to be in Lebanon, where I'm helping to support the projects here, which take care of Syrian refugee children and also children that have been affected by the Beirut blast. So today I've been asked to talk about the future, and the quote was that the future is bright, that it's resplendent. Now, there's not a lot of people saying that. Rather, most of the time when we think about the future, there are so many messages in our pop culture and, just looking around at the news that make the future look pretty dark, that we're melting down our climate, that the climate's collapsing, that there's so many problems still in the world. And our minds have this thing called negativity bias, which means that we tend to give a lot more importance to negative news than to positive news. Positive news comes incrementally often, and it often goes unnoticed. There is a Swedish statistician who wrote the book Factfulness. His name begins with Hans. I'm forgetting the whole name. But that was talking about how we do not actually have accurate views of even the present moment, and that if you actually look at the facts, a lot of things are improving more than you would think by watching the news. For sure, the world is a lot less of a brutal place than it was in the medieval ages, and most of us will not see famine and war the way that it was almost a given that every generation would experience that in most of the world. Some parts of the world that's still happening, but there's a lot of places where the world has become a lot safer, the standard of living is better. But there are serious problems that we do need to overcome, like climate collapse, like this pandemic. And in order to reach that resplendent future, or in order to be building it even from now, because the future isn't something distant, it's a result of what we do in the present moment. And so our actions now have to be leading us towards the future that we wish to see. We shouldn't just be waiting for it to descend magically from the sky, some type of Sadvipra savior, some type of magical, supreme, enlightened beings just to come and rescue us. We have to become the change we want to see in the world. So what does that mean? What is the change that the world needs in order to reach a resplendent future? I think that one of the key things is developing a collective mindset, because a lot of what's happening on the planet right now is causing strife, that's causing planetary imbalance, isn't because we lack the skills, isn't because we lack the intelligence, isn't because we lack the technology to be able to solve those problems. What's lacking is the consciousness, because still the consciousness on the planet is primarily dominated by individualistic thinking and by a limited way of looking at things, only for selfish interest, for limited profit, feeling that, still some paradigms like survival of the fittest are still being used to justify behavior, human behavior, whereas that might have some applicability in describing evolution up until the level of human consciousness. Once we have human consciousness and we have choicefulness and we have moral values, that's not a good explanation anymore. That's not a good justification. That's not a good way to run our planet. And so one of the most essential things is how can we be living with more awareness about our impact on the whole. I was thinking for many years, how will this change happen? Because we seem so far from that. And we know that it often takes circumstantial pressure to generate changes of consciousness. And when we want to, we can change quickly. There was not too long ago in Cape Town in South Africa a day where they were reaching close to day zero, they called it, where they were going to literally run out of water. And under this intense pressure, collective pressure, people made dramatic changes in their consumption, in their ability to conserve. And ultimately, the situation also stimulated some people that had access to reservoirs of water to release them, and just when they did that, then rains came back and the crisis was avoided. I hope we don't have to get to those types of extremes, but I also feel the pandemic is one thing that it's a call. You know, I mean, it's a challenge, because I was amazed to see governments and economies choosing things that were not in the best interest of business, not in the best interest of the economy, but that they felt compelled to do to protect human health during this past period of the pandemic. And I feel it is a challenge which humanity is facing with mixed results, because some people in this particular situation are understanding that they need to make choices that might be individually inconvenient, uncomfortable, wearing a mask, practicing social distancing, I don't know, getting a vaccine, these types of things, but that are being done to protect the vulnerable, being done for the collective. So I feel this is a challenge that's bringing to the surface, you know, the need for us to be able to act as one sometimes. And the harm, you know, early in this situation, I was talking to somebody who's Asian, and they were saying you can see the difference right now, and if you look at the impact of the pandemic between the countries that have a certain value of social discipline, more the Asian countries, versus the individualistic capitalistic countries, where the focus is more on individual rights and freedoms and things like this, which is great in many situations, but in a situation where you need to work collectively and where you need to face the threat together, it can be undermining that initiative. So it is one example of a type of circumstantial pressure that is shifting consciousness, hopefully, towards other values besides only individual values. And this is really fundamental, because it's the lack of collective thinking. It's when we're only thinking about our own needs, and our own needs means not just our own needs as an individual, but our own needs as humanity, when we're not considering also the needs of other species as being intricately intertwined with our own fate, with our needs to protect our very environment. That consciousness, we need to cultivate it. That consciousness is called neo-humanist consciousness. That expanded way of thinking. There's two primary motivations for our behavior. One of them is the selfish pleasure, and that is, of course, a very strong motivator. But the other strong motivator is when we're doing things for a greater whole. And so as we start shifting our consciousness to be able to do that more consistently, I think then that's what's going to bring about a future where we can truly face and truly solve a lot of the big challenges facing us, because we have the skills for it. There are people already that are earth healers, earth regenerators, that are using different types of plants, different types of mushrooms to regenerate landscapes that have been devastated by things like nuclear waste. And so, you know, the intelligence is there, the skill is there. We need to create that motivation, and we need to think, each and every one of us, how to embody that in our own lives, how to expand our own awareness, to be thinking when we do make choices, using, not just analyzing pro and con, but always bringing into our decision making this idea of how will this affect the whole? What is really in the best interest for the happiness, for the welfare of all beings? And so it's not going to descend from the sky. We have to build it up in our own consciousness. We have to build it up inside of ourselves. And we have to help to contribute to changing the way that people think. We have to create a viral wave of neo-humanism on the planet. Thank you. Namaskar.